off here. Everybody in the Christmas mood, Christmas spirit? Uh-huh. So this morning, I want to kick off with this. How many in here have ever heard of a man by the name of Michael Phelps? Anybody know Michael Phelps? Yeah, raise your hand. Anybody? Who is he?
Swimmer.
Oh, he's a swimmer.
Most decorated swimmer.
Yes, he is indeed. Now, let me ask you this. Have you ever heard of this guy? Hickam El Garoj. Anybody heard of him?
Also a swimmer, right?
Not exactly. There's a little similarity between these guys, but not a swimmer. All right, so I want you to envision this. Michael Phelps, what do we know about him?
Olympic swimmer.
Yep. This is good old Michael Phelps right here. We know he's definitely a swimmer. He is still today the most decorated Olympian out there. With all the medals that he has won, both individual and combined events, he still holds the record for the most medals, which is phenomenal, right? This guy, Hakeem El, I gotta spell his name right. Garoj. Where's Michael Phelps from? Yeah, we'll put U.S., but you're right, it is Maryland. Very good. This gentleman, any clue? Huh?
Russia.
No, Morocco. But here's what's cool about this guy. He's also an Olympian. He's a runner. And he's one of the most decorated runners for what they call like the mile, 2 mile, 3 mile, 4 mile, like 1,500 meter, 2,000 meter type distance run, okay? Which is kind of interesting. So both Olympians in their own right, one obviously with more decorated medals than the other. Let me share a couple of things that are very unique about this. Looking at the board, what's something obvious that's a distinction?
They're both males.
Okay, that's a similarity. Yes, they are both male. Very good, very good. A distinction.
Phelps is taller.
Okay, Phelps is taller. Don't worry, good. There's still hope for you.
I know.
You'll be okay.
I just point out the obvious for you, Coach.
All right, so that's right. So here's an interesting fact. Phelps is 6'4". And do you know that the average, when you look at the Olympic swimmers, the average in that sport is right at that mark. All right. How tall do you think this guy is? Okay, you're close. He's not exactly scale. He's actually 5'9". Not huge, right? I'm 6'3", okay? In the peak of these guys, their sport, Michael Phelps weighed 198 pounds. Okay? Hakeem weighed 138 pounds. What is unique about Michael Phelps? What makes him an amazing swimmer? Any clue? Okay, upper body strength.
And lungs, I think.
And lungs, yep, you're absolutely right. If you notice the torso difference, but here's something that's really interesting about these two. And here's how I got on this little story, because I'm reading a book right now called Atomic Habits. It's very good, by the way. My wife gives me a hard time. I always love reading self-help books, right? But this book is about how do you make good habits versus bad habits. Well, in this book, it talks about, we have God-given physical talents, okay? Just genes alone. When you look at Michael Phelps, and then you compare Hakeem, there are height differences. There's a 7-inch difference between these two guys in terms of height. Obviously, one operates in the water. The other one operates on land. But there's something identical about these guys. Can you guess?
Determination.
Huh?
Determination.
Okay, yeah, determination.
Work ethic.
It's physical.
The length of their legs.
Very good. The inseam of both of these guys is the same. Now, here's what's wild. When you read this book and you uncover this, this gentleman, 138 pounds, 5'9", he basically has a short upper body but long enough legs that he can just run like a gazelle, okay? Can you imagine Michael Phelps running for 3 miles? The weight of him alone, statistically, he would collapse. But his genes, his physical makeup, the way he's built, he's a swimmer through and through, because what do swimmers do the majority of? They're pulling through that water. And he has such length and upper body strength. That's what makes him amazing in that sport. But if you reverse these two guys, like if you put Hakeem in the pool, he'd be like me, dog paddling, just trying to keep up with these guys. There's obvious uniqueness that when you look at the physique of these two guys. Now, I want you to look around the room. Look at our physiques. Look at the physical differences. God made us in a unique way, right? I want you to hold this mental image, because today we're going to discuss one of my favorite parables. All right? The parable of the talents. The parable of the talents. You're going to find this particular parable by Jesus in the book of Matthew, and you're also going to see a similar account in the book of Luke. Now, Luke titles it, or what the Bible has it titled, the 10 Minas, if I'm pronouncing that right. But the story is identical. But in the book of Matthew, the talents. What do you know about that story? Any guesses? The parable of the talents.
There were 3 guys. One guy got 5 talents, one guy got 2, and one guy got 1.
Very good, Calvin. All right. What'd they do with them?
The first 2 with the 5. First one worked hard, got 5 more talents. Second one worked hard, got 2 more talents. And the third one just got lazy, dug a hole, and buried it.
Yeah, that sounds like what I would do. That's right. So, the parable of the talents. Before we go down this path, though, we need to understand the scope in which Jesus shared this particular parable with his disciples, okay? And we're going to get into a little bit of a discussion here about what exactly is a talent. But let's take a look at this. So, Jesus and his disciples are along the way trying to uncover and understand. Jesus is sort of alluding to his team, his disciples, that there's an end of age that will come. And the disciples are trying to understand what he is referring to. So I want us to start here. Turn your Bibles to Matthew chapter 24. And I'm going to read a few things for the sake of time. We'll get into some discussion here soon. So in Matthew chapter 24, Jesus left the temple, beginning with verse 1. Jesus left the temple and was walking away when his disciples came up to him to call his attention to its buildings. Do you see all these things? He asked. I tell you the truth, not one stone here will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down. As Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately. Tell us, they said, when will this happen? And what will be the sign of your coming, of the end of the age? Jesus answered, watch out that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, claiming I am the Christ, and will deceive many. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. He goes on within this chapter, further down to verses 26 on. So if anyone tells you there he is out in the desert, do not go out, or here he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For as lightning that comes from the east is visible even in the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Wherever there is a carcass, there the vultures will gather. Immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. At that time, the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all the nations of the earth will mourn. He goes on even further, over to verse 36, again in Matthew 24. No one knows about that day or hour, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, up to the day Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. 2 men will be in the field. One will be taken and the other left. 2 women will be grinding with a handmill. One will be taken and the other left. Therefore keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come. But understand this. If the owner of the house had known of what time of night the thief was coming, he would have kept watch and would not have let his house be broken into. So you also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come in an hour when you do not expect him. Who then is the faithful and wise servant, whom the master has put in charge of the servants in his household to give them their food at the proper time? It will be good for that servant whose master finds him doing so when he returns. I tell you the truth, he will put him in charge of all his possessions. But suppose that a servant is wicked and says to himself, my master is staying away for such a long time. And he then begins to beat his fellow servants and to eat and drink with drunkards. The master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect it, and in an hour he is not aware of. He will cut him to pieces and assign him a place with the hypocrites, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So he's telling all of this to his disciples. Can you imagine what his disciples are feeling right now? I mean, Jesus is not painting a real rosy picture here, is he? At least it doesn't sound like to me. What do the end times look to you? Let's imagine for a second. Are we in them? What do you think?
Feels like it sometimes.
Yeah, it does feel like it sometimes. How come?
And everyone went to his own town to register.
The wickedness of the world.
So Joseph
Okay.
also went up from the town of Nazareth
What else do y'all anticipate
to Judea,
the end of the age?
Bethlehem, the town of David. Walk slowly and just stop by the big flowers.
Or is there really an end of age?
Walk very slowly. He went
Jesus
there
says
to
there will be.
register with Mary, who was pledged to be
And rumors of war. Wars and rumors of war.
stand down so we don't knock over the flowers.
But I also feel like he's saying,
While they were there,
but you don't know when. And so you've got to
born, and she gave
live like it could be
born a son.
today.
Mm.
At that point,
Live like it could be today. Yeah.
she gave birth
Um,
to her firstborn, a son. You will bend
there's a lot of unknown here.
behind the manger,
The disciples, put yourself in their shoes, they're just as curious. As Deb said, you don't know when that real day is coming. Right? We can go about our merry lives and everything's going well, but when you think about the end times,
so you can lay him in the
are we prepared?
And there were
It brings us back to this beautiful
out in the fields
parable
nearby.
that after 24, we get into chapter 25, and here's where Jesus sort of lays out. He actually gives them a few different parables. But one, this one, the talents, speaks to this event at the end of the age. And he's given his disciples some direction through this parable. So let's turn, well, actually, before we go there, to look at the parable of the talents. What is a talent? Besides Mark. What is a talent? What is a talent? Anybody know?
It's a weight of silver.
Some precious metal. Very good. So a talent in biblical times, yeah, it was very good. So a talent in biblical times, that's exactly right. So let's be clear about this. A talent back then was a unit of measurement, right? That was used to value things. Many of us might have heard of this, shekels. You've seen this written in the Bible. The minas, we see this in the book of Luke. The talent, so think it was a scale, right? Historians have equated one talent to be about 75 pounds. And how do we know this? And talent is not just used in this particular parable of Matthew. The word talent is used all through the Bible. And let me show you a few different things. So in the book of Exodus, chapter 38, verse 24, all the gold that was used for the work and all the construction of the sanctuary, the gold from the offering was 29 talents. In the book of Samuel, 2 Samuel 12:30, David took the crown from their king's head and it was placed on his own head. It weighed a talent of gold and it was set with precious stones. In the book of Revelation, great hail from heaven fell upon men, each hailstone about the weight of a talent. That's a heavy hailstone, right? Equivalent to 75 pounds. So we have to put this in perspective of what Jesus is about to share here in this parable. As time goes on, the word talent, yes, it's a unit of measure, but it also gets referred in such a way that what? What is your talent? What is your skill set? What is your value? What do you bring? What can you offer in terms of ability? This is how that word through the course of time has become to be understood. So if you looked at the dictionary today, you'll actually have two definitions. One of just that, one's personal ability to do something, a talent, right? Or number two, it's a unit of measure. So I want you to hold this image, and we're going to look at this right now, and we'll get to the end, it'll really make some sense. So turn your Bibles to Matthew chapter 25. And beginning with verse 14, we're going through 30. I'll read it for you. Here's what I've learned in this study. So different Bible versions call it different things. Like one version I was looking at this week had the parable of the gold. Some say the parable of the talents. So you're going to have maybe some different versions of this. Mine's the NIV. I looked at the New Standard Version. King James talks about talents. You can go to a different one and you'll find the parables of gold. But understand that. So the beginning of verse 14, again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents of money, to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The man who had received the 5 talents went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 more. So also the one with the 2 talents gained 2 more. But the man who had received the 1 talent went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money, just like Calvin did. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received the 5 talents brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 talents, and see, I have gained you 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. The man with the 2 talents also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 talents. And see, I have gained you 2 more. His master also replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Then the man who had received the 1 talent, he came over. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seeds. So I was afraid. Now went out and hid your talent in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. His master replied, you wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well then, you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I return, I would have received it back with interest. Take the talent from him and give it to the one who has the 10 talents. For everyone who has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken from him. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. What do we understand about that story? You're one of the disciples. You're hearing this from Jesus.
I think it's kind of interesting. It seems like he gives the talents to them based on their abilities, because he doesn't give the 5 to the one who's going to waste it. He gives the 1 to the one who's going to bury it, and the 5 to the one who is going to do the most with it. I think that's kind of interesting. I don't necessarily know like why he would do that, but it's interesting.
That is an interesting perspective. Yeah, okay, I like that. You know, God sort of knows our abilities up front, right? It's no secret to him. It might be a secret to us.
It does say each according to his ability.
Each according to his ability. So yes, the master knew what they could or could not do. Okay.
I've got a parable title difference that you might find
Okay.
interesting. New Living says Parable of the 3 Servants.
Mm,
Not about the money, about the servants.
okay. What else do we learn about this?
Well, if I was hearing this for the first time, I think that I would hear, oh, I need to do better if I can. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
I need to do better. That's what I would hear to go, ooh, I don't want to be that person. So we've got some hindsight to look back and do this. So I just, for a second, I thought, okay, if that's the first time I heard it and you did a good reading, I think I would hear, that's what I came away with for a second was, I need to do better. I need to step up.
Okay.
Something I haven't thought
Additional
about.
thoughts? Yeah, good.
Something I haven't thought about a whole lot, but in verse 25, like when he's trying to explain himself, he says the reason he did it's because he was afraid. You talk about the perspective of the apostles, right? I'm sure there was some like fear and trepidation about like we're not going to do it the way we're supposed to do it, or I'm going to make mistakes, or I'm going to get killed for this. And so you know, some of this may be Jesus just trying to get through to them, like, look, it doesn't matter if you're afraid or not. Like, you have something you need to do. It doesn't have to be perfect, but like, you can't just say I'm afraid and that's my excuse and I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah, yeah. There's a good deep lesson right there. Have we all ever been in a situation where you're fearful and you're afraid to maybe go out on a limb to do something? Raise your hands. Anybody?
Ryan, I think there's an interesting perspective here too,
Uh-huh.
which is if one of them if the 5 talent person had actually come back with 4, but he had been investing it some way and lost money or whatever, how would that be taken? I think it would have been taken positively because at least he was trying to do something.
That's a good point.
Sometimes we just need to try to do things. We will not always be able to accomplish those things.
Yeah, yeah,
So, you know, but if you're not trying, at least something.
yeah. That's an interesting perspective. I mean, when you read the story, right, the first 2 did attempt. I mean, you didn't know what their outcome was going to be, right? It's like us putting money in an investment ourselves. You really don't know what you're getting on the backside. You can sort of guess. You can look at prior history and see where things could perform, and you just kind of hope for the best. But you really never know. But you take a chance, try it. Okay,
It'd be like me
That
trying to
effort.
lead singing.
that's true.
Ain't gonna work.
That's right. Think about these 2 guys right here. They each had what I'll call a God-given unique ability. They obviously had the physique, right? These 2 men took it. They just, through the course of human motivation and encouragement. Think about these men growing up as kids and coming up through the ranks and being coached and led along and say, you know what, Bill, you've got such an amazing talent. You've got to apply it. If you don't, son, you're missing out on something. BJ.
This is just my interpretation, but I get the impression that the 1-talent man, his excuse for what he did with the gold, he's not necessarily being honest about that. That he's saying, "Oh, yeah, this belongs to you. Here you go. I kept it for you." But the response to that is that he's wicked and he's lazy, and that he should have put this in the bank so that at least it would be earning interest. And so the fact that he dug a hole and hid it in the ground rather than just putting it in some secure place where it could be building at least a little bit of interest, to me that says he was considering that gold his. That was not the master's gold. Only he knows where this is, so that in an emergency, if something comes up and he needs some money, he knows where that is and he can go get it to use for himself.
Yeah.
So
that's
I
an
don't think
interesting
he really was considering that his master's gold until the master returned and said, "Where is it?"
That's a good point. Yeah, Carol.
To attach on to that, the whole thing to me, the huge thing is it's not theirs, it's God's. Not a bit of it is theirs. Not a bit of it. And so, as BJ said, he took responsibility as though it were his, the one who had been given one. But none of it is ours.
None of
or
it is ours. Yeah.
in the parable.
Yeah. Deb.
Well, and kind of along those lines, I think it's easy to get caught up in, I see that piece of it as him being afraid. Like, if I try this, I won't do it well. And it's easy, I think, to get caught up in it's me or my talent versus it's God. And I just have to trust that God will use me as opposed to me stumbling around.
Yeah.
And it's all too easy to get that mixed up.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. You know, when I first read this, and I got to this last guy, when I first read it, I thought, well, why is he, you know, if my dad gave me something and said, son, I want you to hold on to this, take care of it. Okay, it's done. I think about some of the, you know, my dad growing up, he gave me a beautiful shotgun that his father had. It was a 16 gauge, right? And as a man, young man, you get, son, I want to give this to you. This is a proud possession. I want you to take care of. Well, what do? Your reaction is, well, I just want to store it and preserve it. You know, what am I going to do? I don't want to change it. I don't want to alter it. I want to take care of what my father gave to me. So when I first read this, I thought, man, that just seems kind of harsh. The guy just preserved it, right? He dug it and just put it in the ground just to keep it whole. But when I go back and reread this, I'm like, I'm sort of getting the hint here that God, our master, he doesn't want Kaiser just staying whole. There's more from you, son, that I need to have out of you. I need you to do something and apply yourself into this kingdom that I've given you. It's not just about preserving where you're at. It's what are we doing with the blessings?
It's using that talent. It's not
Exactly.
just keeping it in your gun cabinet. It's
Exactly.
going out and using it.
Right. Or maybe showing my sons, hey, here's a prized possession, right? I want you to learn how to shoot. I want you to learn. You're passing on. You're doing something with it. I want us to ponder this for a bit, because really when you read the parable of the talents, we get 4 key questions that really should be challenging our way of thinking. Number 1, what has God given you? You see in this story, the parable of the talents, probably it's gold, it's something of value. What has God given each of you, though? And that's an open discussion question. What's God given you?
I've got to say something.
Sure, fire away, Shirley.
All right, I have been bothered by that for a long time because I kept looking for a talent. I kept looking for something that God had given me. And I couldn't find it, you know, because I'm looking at all these other people. You teach, all these other people. And I'm going, okay, what? I don't see anything a talent that I have. But then finally, I got a definition for a talent. You want to hear it?
I do.
A talent is something that you do so easily that you do not think of it as a talent, and you think that everybody else can do the same thing that you do. Does that make sense, anybody?
Everybody get that?
Is that?
This book says exactly what Shirley says. How do we form good habits of doing the right things? This author, and much like what Shirley says the first thing you got to do is find things that come easy to you. Because when you do the things that are easiest, you typically, you excel at it. And other people can benefit from that, right? It's not a hard concept. Oftentimes you say, well, I want to be challenged. Well, that's true. We all want to be challenged, but he talks in this particular book about building good habits is doing the things that you do well and keep growing on that. If you're trying to do things that you're never doing well and you're struggling, you just get down in the dumps and you're always fighting against yourself. Think about this. If Michael Phelps tried to be a long-distance runner, sooner or later, the poor guy is going to get frustrated. 198 pounds, running for 5 miles, constant wear and tear in his body. He's going to be so worn out, he's going to give up. Hard for him to create a good habit of continuing that pace of trying to use that gift. But you look in the mirror, you get coached along, and you say, you know what, Mike? I tell you what, the way you're built, son, swimming's the thing for you.
I'm gonna give you an addition on there. I had a son that was a swimmer, and he was 6'4".
Uh-huh.
I tell you something else God gives you. Long fingers and big feet.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee you that Michael Phelps came into this world really odd looking. Because he had those long fingers and he had those big feet, and everybody said, Michael, you're gonna grow into it.
No.
At our congregation in Houston, we were blessed with 4 Olympic runners, sprinters. And one of them started out wanting to play baseball. And he went out for baseball and they said, you are no good at this. You're quick when you run the bases, you're really quick. And so he started running instead and eventually became a gold medalist and for a while was the fastest man in the world.
Yeah. That's wild. Jack.
Unfortunately, our society is built on, we gotta be like other people. We gotta be like Mike. And Shirley,
That's a tough one.
her statement is saying, you know, I gotta be like me. Shirley does hospitality as good as anybody in the world.
Oh, golly.
And, you know, that's her, one of her talents. And she doesn't need to be like somebody else.
That's exactly right. This book right here, the author talks about that very thing as well. He says, this world pushes us in the wrong direction. We're always trying to be like someone else. When what we need to do is find who we are individually and apply that. It's good to be different. It's good to be, if you're a teacher, then teach. You don't want to hear me singing. I mean, I can tell you right now, that is not my gift. To others, I think about, you know, just the gift of like hospitality. There is a unique, and I'll pick on a few. Debbie, I'll pick on Shirley, I'll pick on just, you know, Carol. I mean, there is a demeanor, right, about these individuals that just draws you in. And when you, like the sock party at Shirley's house, oh, we're gonna go to Shirley. But Shirley, just, and I'm praising you because this is a gift, right? You have the gift of pulling people together. You have the gift of bringing people together. It's just your personality. You're using that to draw people in. Now,
But I don't see that.
don't see that, but I think this is where, and again, when we're in God's kingdom, we're not just doing this alone, folks. We're here. This is and we hear it all the time. This is the beauty of church. This is the beauty of coming together because we need each other to motivate one another and say, Shirley, you're it. We need you. You've got to pull us together. Because we recognize that talent. Now here's the next thing. What are we doing with it? What are we doing with it? I use this simple example. And I don't want to harp on this. This is just one little micro thing of a talent, right? But if Michael Phelps, the way he was built and the way he was trained, if he never did anything, can you imagine the regret that maybe growing up he never pursued? Do you ever feel that way? I wonder if I should have done that, or at least tried it. What are you doing with the talent God's given you? And more importantly, the third question, are you ready for his return? Jack.
Well, that third question, one of the things that often escapes us about this example is the element of time. All of Jesus' disciples thought they were going to have a kingdom right away.
Yeah.
And what he's telling them here is there's this tension between be ready for God to come back, but we're in this for the long haul.
Yes.
Live like you're in it for the long haul.
That's right.
It's not about, well, Jesus is coming back tomorrow, so we can bury our thing and he'll be back and we'll be okay.
Yeah.
You gotta live like you're in the long haul, but you always have to be ready to go.
And live, not just for the long haul, but live as if you truly don't know when that's gonna happen. He said it plain as day in the sign of the age in chapter 24. He's sort of telling his folks, look, guys, here are all these signs, but you still don't know the hour in which the sun will come. But he challenges them. What are you gonna do while you're here on earth until that time does come? And then, last but not least, what will Jesus say to you on that day? The master comes. And now we have to give account. These servants did. What will Jesus say to you on that particular day? What holds us back? What holds us back?
Fear,
Okay.
fear of being judged. Like, if I try to lead singing, I'm horrible at it. You know, but if I don't try, I don't know.
That's true. Absolutely. Yeah. Fear,
Judgment.
fear, judgment. Other thoughts? What holds us back?
Comparison,
Hmm.
right?
Ooh,
Comparison,
comparison, yes.
right?
yeah.
So if I think that I should have this gift, but really my gift is something else, then I'm not using that talent that God has given me.
Yeah,
I'm trying to,
yeah.
What's somebody think about you?
What's the other person thinking? Am I gonna go out on a limb here and, you know? It's, sure, we're always comparing. The fear, the judgment, the comparison, it stops us. We read it on that third servant, right? Out of fear, what did he do? Buried it.
He was also lazy.
Oh, okay, yes. He was lazy. He didn't get off the sidelines to do anything with it. Now, his other two buddies, they did something. And I can't imagine the one that got 5 talents created 5 more. He had to do something to get the 5. What did he do? He had to get off the porch and do something with it. Wasn't magically going to appear. He put some effort into it. I love this parable. Love it, love it, love it. It challenges me because it's always, I'm too tired to go to church today. I'm too tired to do that. I just don't want to, I can make an excuse for anything. My wife hears it. I can make excuses for anything. Young and old, we can make excuses for anything. The servants, one made an excuse, hid it out of fear. The other 2, they got off the porch and did something. The challenge for this parable, for all of our sakes, is we've got to do something. All of us have a unique talent. We've got a pot of gold that God has given you. And my conclusion here is preparation, participation, and investment into God's kingdom is going to ensure us a place with Him after this life. We read about it. Now, this is my conclusion, my interpretation of this. But when I read this story, it's hard not to agree with this. We've got to prepare ourselves. Jesus teaches us how. We have to accept Him. We have to be faithful. We have to recognize that He is the Christ. That's preparing ourselves. It's accepting Christ in your life and moving forward. I had to do that. We get baptized. We accept that. That's preparation. Now, participation is what we've talked about. Kaiser, I don't want you just sitting on the sidelines. I want you to go teach. Put forth an effort. Talk to people. Get yourself out there. Do some studying. Participate in what I've given you. if I just sit at home and don't involve myself with other people in this church, how am I going to learn some new things? How am I going to maybe impact others? Those that are in the missions field, those that are in hospitality and all this, if you didn't get off the porch to do those types of things, how would you really make an impact? We've got to participate. The investment, whether it's time, whether it's your money, whatever, it's giving of yourself, it's investing of yourself. But remember, Carol said at the beginning, everything we have is God's. You're investing what God's already given you. You're just investing His stuff, but you're trying to do something with it. I love this parable growing up, and it still challenges me at my age. For our young ones going off in life, man, I hope this really hits you. Is whatever you decide to do, whatever you get involved with, use the talent. Make the difference. Make a name for God's kingdom. This can really make a difference. And when we get to judgment, we don't know when that's going to happen. It's everybody's guess. But I sure would like to be ready when Jesus says, what have you done?
But if you do that, you grow and you love the Lord because you're on a different level.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
You're investing.
Thank you, everybody. We'll leave it there. Have a great day.